It's time for Who Watch, time and relative blackness in space.
Black girls have the box.
Hi, everyone. It's Bayana, Connie, and Robin coming to you live from the Time Vortex.
Today, we are continuing our companion series by discussing all there is to discuss about Amy Pond and, you know, the Ponds in general.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amy and her boys.
Amy and her boys. As I was getting ready for this call, I was like realizing Amy and Rory. It feels weird that we're just like, it's the Amy podcast, but
yeah,
most of her time on as a companion was with Rory.
Yeah.
And Amy and Rory are my favorite companions. And as I was getting ready for this recording and thinking about it, I realized it's because this is the season 7. 7?
Well, 5 through 7.
Season 5 is when I started watching live. And so I had done like a huge binge of Doctor Who. Shout out to my old coworker Edison, who got me on Doctor Who. And I'd gone to Comic-Con and they were there, there was a presence. I don't think Matt and Karen were there that year, the year before, but they were there the next year. But there was definitely a bigger presence of like Doctor Who and BBC America and all that stuff there. And so, I also remember just feeling like, you know, I'm at Comic-Con and this is like this brand new shiny thing that everyone's talking about. And I'm like, I know. I am like, and then like all of the cosplay that I'd seen and all of that stuff, I was like, I
suddenly
get
makes
it now.
sense.
Right. It all makes sense. It was like, so yeah, it was one of the first, you know, because Comic-Con's in July and then like the new shows start in September, October-ish, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like the first time that I started a series like with everyone else and on the same page as everyone else. Mm-hmm. And so I like knew what to expect. I knew kind of what I liked and what I didn't like. At that point, I still hated Martha. She was my least favorite companion.
Oh, no.
We talked about how that was wrong and it was the writing, not her. But you know, I hadn't thought through it yet. And Donna was my favorite. And so I was also a little bit like, ugh, another redhead. Like, way to like try to recreate Donna, you know? Because it's like, you know, he wants to be ginger.
Wow, there were more redheads than black people at that point. Wow.
There were. Wow.
Just all kinds of white people diversity. not any larger.
They got gingers, they got Scots.
You know, more than one Scottish person at that point. Like,
yeah,
these northern UK accents. Interesting. Anyway,
all this diversity. So I think that like the other thing too is I still think that like Tennant was my favorite Doctor, but like, and I was kind of, you know, they'd announced Matt, and I was like, ugh. He's this kid, right? But by the end of the 11th hour, he got me. And by the end of that season, he was my Doctor. And I think part of it was like I had to wait every week. So I would like rewatch and like, you know, and I think the season 5 is actually really good.
Season 5 is phenomenal.
I really like was,
Probably
you know.
should have did that and been like, whoop, I'm out.
I'm out, right. So I was really excited. I was like, super the height of like pro Moffat can do no wrong.
Yeah, agreed.
Like,
you know, they got to. There was not only like the writing, but also like the new look. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
The CGI was upgraded. Like everything was.
They got a budget.
Right.
Yeah.
They like, there was just a lot of stuff happening at the beginning of, like, the marketing and all that. Like, they just kind of were like, okay, we're in here. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of that is, like, kudos to David Tennant. You know what I mean? But,
Absolutely.
like, they definitely were, like, riding that wave. And so, and Amy was, I love the way that we met her. I loved once I found out that young Amy's, like, Karen Gillian's cousin. Like, if you want me to like a casting, tell me that they're somehow related in real life. Like, the whole Black Panther, fathers playing sons and sons, you know, like, I'm like in love with that. Like, even if I don't think the actor is that great, if I find out that they're playing someone they're related to, I'm like, they were pretty good.
You're an easy sell. Hollywood is not ashamed of nepotism, so you're an easy sell.
Not at all. And I hate Hollywood nepotism except for when they're playing
the same character.
When they're playing their younger selves. Like,
or when they're related.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, so I just think that, like, all of that stuff, and then, you know, we got to see young Amy. I still think the 11th Hour is probably the best Regeneration episode. Of all of them.
It's way better than 10s. I don't hate 10s, but
no, 10s we can Harriet Jones.
Let's pause though, because not pause, but like we're not talking about 11 and his regeneration. This is the Amy episode. I'm just saying, yeah,
true.
No, we'll get carried away.
No, yeah, I'm just saying. But as an introduction, right? Because it was literally a clean slate. We get a new doctor, we get a new companion, all in the same episode. 10's Regeneration, we still have Rose and all this, you know, whatever. But yeah, we got 4 doctors now in New Who. 5. It's been we haven't seen Jodie's Regeneration episode yet, but, like, it's my favorite so far in the way that they wove in Amy and, like, getting to know her and then, you know, seeing her, like, skipping 12 years, basically.
Yeah, because we have to, like, do 2 introductions at the same time, and I think that they managed balancing that well with the weight of a new doctor's regeneration and having to, like, sell us on this new actor and, like, the new aspects of his personality that Tennant didn't have, while also introducing us to a new companion after we've had 4 that people, you know, various feelings, but some of the last companion episodes of season 4 are like all of them, and it's just like those are all of my favorites, or like, oh snap, my favorites in this last episode, and then this, you know, there's the specials, but we don't have to talk about those. But you know, like, they have to do double duty in introducing us to both aspects of this new adventure under a new showrunner. Like, that episode had a lot to do, and it really managed it well. And I think what I like about it and I like about Amy is in that episode in particular is the fairy tale aspect of it, in that, like, it is very much like a child's wish of, like, I need to call a policeman. Dear Santa, I need to call a policeman, and then having one show up, and then, you know, the awkward doctorness of, like, he doesn't come back for 12 years. Oops. Right. But there's, like, most of
the montage of eating, though. You're Scottish. Fry something. Like,
yes, all of that is great. Really great. So yeah, I really like the fairy tale aspect of it, and that introduction is very whimsical. It is, like, one of the lighter episodes of the series, because I think season 5 overall is, like, has a lot of light stuff, even, like, with the angels and stuff, but especially compared to, like, what comes after. But
which is another reason why I think I really love season 5.
Agreed. Because it's the most whimsical and fantastical and light of all of the seasons.
And I think the way that they, like, introduce it or introduce, like, Amy as a companion at this point is, well, I guess still is, like, different. And I will say for Moffat, at least with Amy and Clara, I feel like Bill was a little bit more kind of a nod in terms of, like, the introduction of a companion was a little bit similar to, like, Rose. Rose especially, I think, just
she's
in
very
that,
Rose,
like,
yes.
She's going on, you know, she's going in her regular life and she runs into this dude and she's like, I don't know what's going on. Whereas, like, with Clara and Amy, it's like a weird, it's not even like a weird thing is happening. It's just something different, right? So like with Amy, she's a kid and she's home alone and she's scared about this crack in her wall. And then we like get to, she absolutely should be. And then like with Clara, which we'll talk about her next month, but
must we?
There's like this thing about her, like, and I mean, there are problems with it. And I even think there are problems with like how Amy, like the way that Amy is introduced, like keeps coming back. Like I have issues with that.
Yeah.
But just the way that they introduce Clara, it's not like Clara's just walking around at school and all of a sudden she sees the doctor, right? Like,
yeah.
So, he like goes out looking for her, and also like she's been popping up in different iterations and stuff. So I think like one thing that Moffat did, well, and again, not necessarily that he did it well or consistently, but like he tried to kind of integrate the companions into the story in a way that's slightly different than like what had been done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I also think too, like, we see kind of, and I think they did this with Rose with Rose as well. So we see Amy's life in like her little town, and like Rory sitting there having a crush on her, and then get a girlfriend, Greg or whatever, the cute but dumb guy or whatever, and just how small that is and confining. And so it makes sense, like when she decides to go with the doctor. It also makes a lot of sense why her younger self has like thought about him and like just like fixated on him, and everyone in the town knows about the raggedy doctor and all this stuff. So I think that like I do like that. I like the introduction of Amy. I like the introduction of like the town and kind of the limitations of it. And also seeing kind of, so she's a kissogram, which, like, not quite a stripper, but, like...
There are things about this season that Moffat does very well, but having a woman with backstory is not one of them.
No, not good at that at all.
Because I'm like, is that a job? Like, is that an actual, like,
right,
job? Or was it like, it was something she happened to be doing that day, that weekend, where she just happened to be doing it, and then she's actually into other stuff. Like, I thought there was going to be more where she was like a person.
But then also they don't come back to it, right?
Not
because like, so one of the things about the first episode is that it takes place in 3 different time periods, right? Like,
time to, like
the first time the doctor like crashes into Amy's backyard, she's like 10 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
And then he leaves and comes back like 10 years later or whatever, and then they have one adventure, or 12 years later, sorry. They have one adventure, he leaves, and then he comes back 2 years later. So like it, like when she is a kissogram, we don't know how long that happened when they came back and
summer job
married. Like, is she still doing that? We don't know, and we don't really. And even, I mean, there's a whole thing that can be talked about Amy and the jobs.
Well, she's being like a model, right?
Well, she's a model, and then she's a journalist / writer, and then she has her own campaign, and then there's something else she does too. Like, they can't make up their minds on what it is she does, and it doesn't make sense in the time frame that we have that she has that many career paths.
It also doesn't make sense in like who Amy is. Like, if that was Rose, that would make sense, right? She's 19 or something and finding herself and doesn't feel like she has anything outside of traveling. But Amy, to me, always like felt like she, not to say that she didn't have insecurities or something like that, but she felt like she knew who she was more than, like she didn't, like, she obviously wasn't Martha, who was like, I'm on this path, right? But she didn't feel like Donna or Rose, where they were kind of lost. Like,
and wandering.
And,
but I think it was,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, but I think that's kind of the thing, like with Moffat, where he had this person who seemed very self-assured and knew what they were doing, but then you like kind of peel back the pieces of the characterization and you realize like they don't know what the fuck she's doing. There's actually nothing there.
Yeah, because I feel like so when we, like you said, like, so this episode happens in 3 distinct times, and so when we see her and she's 10, like, obviously she's 10, you know what I mean? She's still molding. She's going through a lot. Her parents are gone for some unknown reason. She's living with her aunt. She's Scottish, but living in, like, this sleepy town in England. So she's an outsider, but, you know, all these things. And so she clings to the doctor, and he helps her, and he listens to her about this crack in her wall. And then we see her, and she's 22, and she's a kissogram, which maybe, you know, it's a summer job. Maybe it's what she's doing now or whatever. It seems like it's summer. I'm going to just pretend like it's summer when he comes back. Because it's bright as hell and sunny, and there's no rain. So at 22, you know what I mean? Like, you are, like, you're just finishing college. You're trying to, you know, like, put together a life. And then when he comes back again 2 years later, she's 24. Rory has gotten up the courage to, you know, like, do something about his crush on her, and they're getting married.
Well, no, he was her boyfriend 2 years ago.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was the nurse.
And then they were getting married 2 years later.
I was thinking about the Melody episode when she, like, calls him out, and he looks exactly the same. So, but yeah, but you know, like, so, like, 22 and then 24 are kind of different. Like, she's, you know, moved on, but not too far removed, you know? And the thing I like about Amy, and the reason why I think she's, like, a great companion, is, like, we see immediately when he comes back 12 years later, she's a fake it till you make it kind of person. Like, this creep has broken into my house. I'm going to put on a cop uniform.
She's such a Gryffindor.
And, right, she's Gryffindor. But, like, you have to kind of be to be a good companion, because
Martha was we already know Martha was Ravenclaw, and she was great at it. Just the writing wasn't great at it.
Right.
But I mean, you have to have some of it in you.
Yes,
yeah, you have to have some bit of Gryffindor in you.
Gumption.
But yeah, so just to, like, you know, put on, like, the thought process of putting on a police officer's uniform and, like, pretending, as opposed to, you know, strange dude breaks into my house and calling the fucking police. Like.
But I think also, like, she recognized him, right? At that point, like, she knew it was him, but, like,
didn't trust
was
herself.
also mad, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, I think it was a couple things going on where she's like, is this real? And also, like, if it is real, like, why did he promised he was gonna come back and now he's not back? So, like, let's see what's going on.
And she was basically gaslit her whole life to, like, think that he wasn't real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was just like, no, this was just someone of your imagination. This did not happen. Where's the evidence? Like, you're just drawing all these weird pictures and, like, making little toys and stuff. Okay, we'll let you have this fantasy. But they weren't, like,
imaginary friend.
Yeah, like, no one was believing her. So I think that also informs her personality in that, like, listen, I don't care what you think. I know what I believe, and what I believe is real. Even though literally no one else believes me that this happened.
I think too the same can be said, like, for the doctor and the crack. Like, she knew something was up with that crack, and everyone's like, it's just a crack. Like,
right.
And he was the one person who believed her.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about the crack in the wall. Because I still, and I don't know if this is well, I have my suspicions if it's my fault or if it's Moffat's writing's fault. But
probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. So the crack in the wall just erased her parents? Is that what happened?
So
that's
remember
what it's supposed to say they, like,
when the light hit someone and they would just disappear from time,
right?
Like, you forget an existence. So yeah, I feel like it ate her parents, and she just doesn't remember them, but knows, obviously, like, I'm with my aunt. You know what I mean? So, like, there's some reason. It was very Harry Potter to me. They died in a car crash. And then
it was weird, though, because then there was, like, a whole big deal made out of her about her parents, like, coming back, and then we never saw them again.
Yeah.
Yes, they were just off in the distance.
And
we
were
spent
like,
more time with Rory's dad. We spent more time
Right.
with Rory's dad than we ever did with Amy's parents.
Yeah.
But also, the Croc was following her. I think mostly I'm thinking probably too much into it, and we know the rule of Tarbis is that you can't think too much into it because it just unspools.
Unravels. Yeah.
Because if she's living in, well, I guess she was just living in England with her parents who are Scottish. I just assumed she was living in England with her aunt because her parents disappeared, but like in Scotland. And so like, but I guess they could have just disappeared in England. Anyway, so like, I don't know. So that's the thing of like, I do love Amy and like her story, but this crack in the wall, I think, is kind of an excuse for why she has so many things missing from her character and from.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I agree. I think that like it's partly an excuse because it also becomes a big deal about like the overall kind of storyline during like 11 is the silence, and
yes,
they did all this shit, and so like the whole point of the Kraken time following her was because like I can't fully explain it, but like they were going back to a very specific time in the Doctor's life, and Amy was that companion, and like the whole thing with the Pandorica was like reading her brain to like come up with this elaborate thing to then like get the Doctor to back and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think that like for season 5 it works. Yes. That like all these things are not there, and she's forgetting things and she doesn't remember the reality bomb and all that kind of stuff. Like it makes sense. Mm-hmm. But then like after that is resolved and you get into season 6, then it feels like you should then see like her parents or like what are their things. You know what I mean? Like I think season 5, like that's part of the plot is that like she absolutely missing these things. And then season 6, I think, and like season 7 to an extent, but like it was half of season 7. Like I think season 6 really should have been that time when then you like develop that, because then how does Amy, and I guess maybe she forgot that she didn't have her parents or something, or like she remembers both timelines, but like
she remembers everything.
Right, but then how do you get used to like not growing up, not having your parents, to them now being in your life and like wanting to like say things or like wanting to do things? But I think that because Moffat didn't want to talk about that, so that didn't.
I didn't want to deal with the repercussions of like her emotional repercussions of like
having both
back.
Things in her head. Yeah, because I remember it being like important that she could remember. Like she forgot Rory. And then she found Rory again, and she could remember when she forgot Rory, and she also remembers. She remembers both, right?
Right, and the same with the Doctor. Like after they like saved the universe or whatever, and like she forgot the Doctor, but her parents were there, and then at some point, I think it was River who like did some shit, gave her a notebook, and all of a sudden she was like the Doctor. And even like Rory, who like how he has. Like, and then Rory has like however many 1,000 years of memory, but then also like not. It's great like in terms of like thinking about time and like that kind of shit. It's lit, but then I think one of the things Moffat did is he often wrote himself into a hole trying to do like really intricate
thing ever.
Which like makes sense, right? Like it's like it's very complicated, but I think that like he was trying to like tie all these loops and tie all these things together, and it didn't really fit, or he just didn't want to deal with the things that were more complicated.
Right, and I think this is the overarching thing about Doctor Who that we've, like you just talked about, Connie, is like you don't want to pull too hard on the thread because it all will unravel. I think it's partially because Doctor Who does not keep with that many rules of their own universe, because they have different showrunners, different writers, and there isn't anyone like the thing I love about Star Trek, and I got to Star Trek after I got to Who, and like later, but there is a canon and there is like a world and there are rules that have like grown and expanded with each iteration of the show and the universe and stuff, but like there are rules.
I think Doctor Who thinks it's doing that.
Yeah.
But what it does, though, and what I think it does is a way to get around their rules, which is why it doesn't bother me as much as other places where they have, like, firmer rules. Mm-hmm. I think one of the, like, large themes about Doctor Who is that, like, time and the universe are like ever changing, ever expanding. You can't really know it all because it's so huge. Right. And so whenever there's a thing where they're like, I thought this thing couldn't happen, but it could, right? Like, you know what I mean? Or like, and the fact that they're able to acknowledge that, like, oh shit, like there's this planet outside of the universe. What the fuck is that? How does that work? And then you're like, okay, well, here's how to explain it. And it doesn't really make sense because it's not like how I explained it. But like, I think with Doctor Who, the reason it doesn't bother me the way that like other like franchises and stories do it is because of the nature of like the story. You know what I mean? Like they purposely keep it open so that when shit happens and you're just like, you told me, you don't have that.
But then the problem is that when you have a universe like that and then you have a showrunner like Moffat, is like he tries to make these big elaborate things. And then you're like, okay, but the rules of how this works is actually important. Like, I need to, like, you're making this big convoluted story that it's supposed to harder to follow. Yeah, and it's like, so I need some rules so I can figure out how this resolves. And instead, he's like, time is magic.
Yep.
And for the most part, I do enjoy that.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of that.
But then when you go back and you're like, well, what is with Amy and Rory? You're like, nah, man, don't pull on that thread.
Can't do it.
Even do it.
So I guess we should move forward and like talk about her relationships with her boys. And I think that, as you were saying earlier, Robin, this was the season that was sort of like Doctor Who's exploded into this global phenomenon, and so they're doing all this press and they're doing tours and stuff. And I think that the thing that makes Amy's relationship with both the Doctor and Rory so interesting is Karen's off-screen relationship with Matt and Arthur. I almost forgot his name. I was like, wow, it's been so long since my like deep dive Tumblr days. I feel like it also kind of makes it complicated just because I was a Matt and Karen shipper back in the day. I was just like, I don't understand why aren't they doing this? But then I was like, but I don't want Amy and the Doctor to be together. And it was just like a very complicated thing because I think they set up this very convoluted relationship of like, Amy kisses the Doctor the night before her wedding. And I'm just like, why do we have to do this? And that
kind of like started, and I think it's weird because the relationship with the Doctor turned into like a best friends thing, but they still had a weird love triangle thing where like Rory was always like weirdly like he was the third wheel for sure, and then he was always like really insecure about Amy's relationship with the Doctor, even like way past the point where it should have been. Like I got like at the beginning, sure,
yes,
but like
they played it way too long.
There were it was like by
how many
time
times
season
they
6
solidified.
Like she was at the beginning of season 6 where when Amy gets kidnapped and she's like talking to the little reporter thing, and Rory somehow thinks that she's talking about the 11th Doctor, and they play it where you're like not sure who she's talking to, and I'm like, at this point y'all are married, like y'all don't know you're pregnant yet, but you're pregnant. Like I just like at this point that needs to die basically. And there are like even more moments in season 6 where he's like, oh well, I didn't know who you were talking to. It's like, fam, really?
Well, I think it all really did make sense to me, which was like, even when he knew, like, Rory's insecurities were, even though he knew, like, once there was no romantic thing and they were best friends, he still had an insecurity or a jealousy of like, you're my best friend, why am I not your best friend type of situation, which is different than like the romantic stuff.
I get that, but they didn't play it like that.
That's how I read it. So
yeah, and I'm not saying I didn't read it like that, and I'm not saying that like that's not a valid way to read it. I'm saying that I'm pretty sure Moffat thought like, let's be, because I don't think he's that clever, so I'm not
like I don't think he has your level of like emotional like maturity about how men and women's friendships work. I just don't think he has that. And he's proven that he does not really have that.
Yeah, and it is valid, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not.
But absolutely, I think that's the better way. The better way to read it. And I think that if there were just a couple of scenes that were less played up on the romantic end, absolutely we could be unified and being like, this is what they meant. But there are just a few times when it's just like there's just too much chemistry between Matt and Karen.
That too.
And again,
that's
I'm just
not something they can really help.
Yeah, I think that maybe that's also part of the problem. It's just like they just had too much chemistry with each other, which is why people were shipping them. And then where it's like, maybe Moffat did, maybe I'm gonna give Moffat 5 seconds of the benefit of the doubt that he did mean in like a best friend in the way that Robin explained, but then the chemistry between the two actors was just so explosive they just couldn't help themselves to make it read to millions of other people that like, okay, maybe it is a little bit more than just friendship we're talking about here. But yeah, that whole triangle is just, it's very complicated.
One of the other reasons, or not a square, a triangle with a little mini. It's a,
because of river.
What are those? You know, like an anglerfish, because then there's like that little point.
Oh God.
Off the thing. I don't know.
Draw a diagram
there's no
for the show notes
shape for it, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing too about this like triangle or whatever shape Rob was talking about is that like it's a very similar way that Rose treats Mickey, especially at the beginning. Amy treats Rory like shit, and she is like takes him for granted so much until he like
literally has to disappear from her brain.
He died. No, he had to die first because he died in the Dream Doctor. He died a couple times before he left out of it.
But he died in the Dream Doctor, and that's when she. And that's
when she was like, "Oh wait, I love you," and it's like, fam, why are you like? Why is it married to this dude, to this clown, and you haven't realized that you like are actually like for her, like for a lot of times she's just like, yeah, you're my friend, and like we're cool, but like, dude, you're getting married to this dude, and like, but so it took her, and it seemed like that episode should have happened before, you know what I mean, like pre that, because I get Amy having like wedding jitters and then going off with the doctor, whatever, like that made sense. But then when Rory does come into the equation and it's like on the TARDIS and the way that she treats him, even a little bit like in season 6 when she's like fully realized how much she does love him and how much he loves her. Like there are moments where it seemed like where she is like taking him for granted in a way that feels unnecessary and rude, especially.
Yeah, I feel like my love of Rory is independent of Amy.
I think so too.
And
Same.
My love of Amy is not independent of the Doctor in a really weird way. Like, I love, and again, I read it as a best friendship, but I did love their chemistry and their like, friendship and stuff. But when, like, there's an episode of The Girl Who Waited, which Bayana does not like, but I like.
I enjoy that.
Where it's the Doctor and Rory, and it kind of happens too when she gets kidnapped. But when the Doctor and Rory are working together, and she's off like by herself, I was like, I want more episodes like these, because even though they would fight about Amy a little bit. I felt like Rory was the better companion in a way that like Martha was, like he had something to bring to that. He was a nurse and he had like knowledge, you know what I mean? But he was also like, I'm going to help, you know what I mean? And like I'm thinking a lot about the, there are a couple of episodes, but one, like the pirate episode, which I still don't understand and I don't really like, and I should probably rewatch. But I did.
It's like fine.
What I really remember is, I remember two things: is that the dad from Downton Abbey was in it, and that Rory's role as a healer and a nurse is very important by itself, separate from his relationship with Amy. And I loved that because he is like a caretaker, and so when Amy is a little bit more narcissistic and self-absorbed, which she could be a lot, it made sense that it was okay with Rory, because he was always like taking care of her. And that was like, and he enjoyed that.
Even when they randomly got divorced.
Yeah. That was very weird.
I actually
Season 7 was dumb. Sorry. They did a lot of really questionable things in season 7.
But we did get texting and scones in season 7,
we did
right?
get no, that was the end of season 6. When they did that was when time stopped, and so they didn't know each other.
Oh, yes. Right. Yes. Yeah. Texting and scones.
But yeah, I mean, I think generally like Amy's relationship with the Doctor ended up, like Robin was saying, like mostly being like friendship.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they got there. It took a second to really
It just took too
do
long
it.
to do it
right. And I do think that like one of the things, so like what like one of you were saying, I feel like it was Robin saying like it's weird to just call this episode like just have it be about Amy, because really like she was the main companion and was the Doctor's like main responsibility, but like Rory was like in season 5 he came in like he was in most of those episodes and was like on the TARDIS pretty early on and then disappeared, and so that was like why. And then by season 6 he was a full-time companion.
And even then when he's disappeared, his presence is still very strongly felt, even though Amy doesn't even know who he is. Like even like the whole Van Gogh episode is about how sad she is and she just doesn't know why. And his like his presence is basically like a cutout like next to them as they're going through this adventure with Van Gogh. Like that's, you know, like his presence is still felt. Absolutely.
Exactly. And also
like, and the Doctor
like remembers as well, so there's always like that's also just like a running kind of,
which is rude. Like how many times are you gonna kill Rory? And how many Tumblr were there of Rory as Kenny, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the whole thing with like the multiple companions, and I want to get to River so bad, so I'm just gonna jump in. It's like Amy is the main companion, I guess, right? She's kind of the link for all of the companions or all of the people in the Doctor's orbit around that time. And I the thing I like the most about the Ponds is it gives the Doctor the closest thing to his own family. It's not like with Rose, he would like, you know, come back and see Jackie and whatever. And he was definitely like an outsider, and that was Rose's family. Yeah. It was like Amy and Rory became his family. And then when River came along, like she was important. Mm-hmm. She was immediately important. And then when Rory's dad came, like he was like,
in it. He was into it, like
right away.
Yeah,
and he just turned up and he was like, "Oh, this is
oh, this is what we're doing." Okay.
Yeah, he scooped them all up on accident. But like the Doctor immediately was like, "Yeah, I don't have to get to know you. Like, I mean, I do need to get to know you or whatever, but like you're under my care. Like we're doing this. We're on an adventure." He didn't like turn around and like drop him off. Be like, "My bad, yo."
Right.
We saw those dinosaurs on his spaceship and went full fanboy, so there's that too.
Right.
He got distracted very early.
I mean, but wouldn't you?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs on a spaceship.
I actually don't hate that episode. I think it's really unnecessary, but I do like that episode a lot. Not even gonna lie.
What? Because Mitchell and Webb are in it. Duh.
No, yeah, I don't care about that. I just like the dinosaurs on the spaceship.
Anyway, I do like what you're saying about this season or this like section of companions being so much of the Doctor's family, and it makes me curious to like step away from this season a bit, is to think about like we know that there's more than one companion for 13, and I'm curious to know if they come linked like these guys did, or if they're like separate, because
Nardal and Bill.
Yes.
I don't think we have to bring him up every episode. It's not Sleep No More.
And yet,
I just feel like he is the why was he there?
Yeah. And so, and see, I hadn't even thought about Nardal being also that. Dang it.
He's a companion, but he has no connection to Bill.
Yeah.
We didn't ask for him. He doesn't fit.
Yeah.
They don't seem to make a cohesive unit.
Yeah, they never like ever become anything more than just like two separate parts of the Doctor's life, then, don't they? Yeah. But anyway, I'm moving past that. I'm just curious as to how the latest companions will come together, and hopefully they will, if they are separate links to the Doctor, I hope that they do become better companions to each other than Nardal and Bill were. But back to Amy and Rory and the river of it all, the river that flows through Moffat's seasons.
The only water in the forest.
Now we talk about Melody, being a companion during this section and being related to Amy very explicitly, we have to talk about the fact that for some reason, and I think a lot of black people did, just thought that Alex Kingston was black.
She is black. Sorry.
She just
You can't tell me different.
She just doesn't have any parentage or...
There's a conspiracy afoot. They're keeping it buried.
Now, the reason why...
I'm telling you, I have a really close... She's like my big sister who has the exact same coloring as Alex Kingston, and she's black.
Yeah,
listen, as a far end spectrum of the light skin brigade, I get it. I would also... But my mind is still blown, and obviously Bayana's still in denial because it's like one of those stages of grief things. But see, the reason I bring it up is because they made Melody black, and I thought they was doing something. I thought it was like, oh, well, we gonna make River the daughter of these two white people. So let's have her regenerate into a black person just to explain why the end result of Alex Kingston is a mixed person. That is not what they were doing. And I just still feel like I really, like, all that time I just had all these theories, and I'm just like, wow, and I just had all these feelings about like making a person of mixed descent, like the daughter of, I was like, why are they whitewashing Alex Kingston? And they weren't. They were just making her as white as she is. And I just felt a lot of confusion as to why Melody was black, and then I just thought they were doing something, and then they weren't. So I just had to get that off my chest, and I think I've expressed it on the pod before, but I just felt like I needed to bring it up since we're talking about this section of companions and episodes.
Yeah. I mean, you know how I feel.
You've expressed it just now, yeah.
To believe. But I also, like, one of the things about Melody's storyline that I think is really cool, and like I feel like oftentimes when people think about like River, it's like with her relationship to the Doctor, because that's like her main kind of thing. That's how she was introduced, and it's super important. But even just like her relationship with Amy and Rory is wild. Like because like they had her. Like, just in terms of, like, their timeline, right? Like, it's they met, or, like, with Amy, met River before she was pregnant. Yeah. And then when she found out she was pregnant, like, was seeing this little girl who was her daughter, who was already born. And then, like, but actually, no, that's wrong. I skipped a step, because first, she grew up with her daughter.
Yeah.
Like, that was her best friend.
Yeah.
And then she met River. And then she ran into this little girl as she was finding out that she was pregnant. And then she, like, has the baby and also learns from River that she is, like, there was just so many different, like, weird points of contact. And then after learns that River is her child, then learns that her best friend is also her child and that she's regenerate. Like, it is kind of a lot.
It's kind of
a
little bit.
It is also lit. The way that
it's also lit.
Yeah.
It
was the one reveal, like, this is, like, when I was like, give Moffat Sherlock, give him what he wants, he can do it. I believe. And
I feel like
by the end of Sherlock and by the end of Doctor Who, I was like, someone get Moffat out of here. Just let him take a nap. He can't do it.
He was doing too much at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was absolutely doing too much at the same time.
My Moffat relationship was just...
I mean, and generally season 6, like, again, like, season 5 was great. I think season 6 kind of like tried to build off that momentum, and in some moments were really great, and other moments were. I think the River, like, storyline was really cool up until the end. I mean, I think that, like, I don't know, the last episode of season 6 was whatever for me, but in terms of, like, her relationship and, like, just the way that her life was, like, jumping around the timeline of her parents and the Doctor, and, like, that whole part is bananas. And
I think for me it was sort of the opposite, where it was a gradual, like, I guess letdown is the feeling of, like, okay, there's just too much happening, and it just it was, you know, I think it was that storyline. I think partially because it's something that I really wanted to work out, and I think that there are ways in which it does, but for me it was just like, cake on top of candy on top of pie. Like, it was like too many things that are sweet and like seem like they could be awesome, but it was just a lot happening at the same time. And then it kind of became a mess in the end. And I think that was the storyline that kind of like made me feel it the most, because I'm just like, okay, but I'm confused, and not in the you're gonna explain it kind of way, because I was confused during the explanation.
Yeah.
Right.
Where I'm just like, okay,
that.
but then she goes into the alley as the little girl, and then she regenerates. But then how long was the little girl living? And then what year is it? And it's still the 60s.
Where was she just running around?
And why was she a child? And then how did the little girl become
I think she regenerated into a baby.
Right, like she regenerated into a black baby who was just left in 1970 something, and then somehow it just was too much. And I think that even if they had taken maybe just that scene out and just had her go straight from one to the other, maybe it would have made more sense.
You know what?
I don't know.
I completely forgot about that little girl.
Yeah,
coming before the baby. My brain was like, no. That don't make sense. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to think about it.
I'm like, what do you mean she regenerated into a baby? That don't make no sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And so, no, because she does not regenerate straight into grown-up Melody Pond. She, like... Melody...
Yeah.
What was her... Mel... something. Her
Mel.
last name wasn't Pond.
It was Mel's, but I don't know that we ever got her last name.
Her last name, yeah. But we also don't know, like, where she was living.
And then she named her daughter after her daughter.
Exactly. That too.
She's like, I'm going to name her after my best friend, who's also my daughter.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I loved.
I did too.
It's fine.
That's when I was like...
Closed loop.
Yes.
I was like, give Moffat everything he wants. I don't understand, but he can do it.
I understand that. I just think that because I remember that other little girl, I guess...
I forgot about the little girl.
Which is fair, because you should.
I just blinked, and I was like, that'll make...
Really, without her, I think it does make much more sense.
Yes.
But the little girl regenerated into a baby.
That's true, right? Because she did,
she was the little thing
she was in that
spaceship.
alleyway.
Like, in the... she was the astronaut.
Suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't...
That did happen. Yeah. That was a thing.
She was like, it's okay, I can fix it. And then she regenerated. But I always assumed that the silence, like, picked her up. Like, they found her. Because when you're a baby,
But I thought that she was raised by the monks or whatever.
The little
white girl was. Silence is like it's what's her name? Madame Kavarian?
Yeah.
With the little eye patch? Yeah,
she raised the little white girl version, right?
But what I'm saying is they probably picked... Because I think they still raised her. I think they picked her up and put her in the 90s to grow up with Amy and Rory.
Now, see, that's a perfectly fine theory. But the fact that it's never explained, I think they raised just the little white girl.
Well, because I did wonder, like, okay, so Mel always comes to them, but where does she go? Like, after school or whatever? Like, she's, like, playing at, like, so is she in an orphanage or a group home?
Well, I think that they maybe don't know. Or she's with Madame Cavari, because I think the other thing too is when she does grow up and all of a sudden she's like shooting at everybody and keep calling her a psychopath and talking about how she was raised to kill the doctor. To be raised to kill the doctor, you have to go back to this thing and be indoctrinated with it, right? And so I think that like staying with Amy and Rory as they grow up allows for them to let their guard down, because again, everything is revolving around Amy's timeline, which I think is maybe partly because Melody is her daughter, but I can't like say that for sure, or just because she's the companion and plot that makes sense to just put it all in front of her time, like around her timeline. It's still because they do and again it's still like it's not said explicitly, but they do say that like Melody was raised to kill the doctor, and
absolutely. And I think that is where I get so lost. And I think that they just never fully explained it properly, and they never say it explicitly. Like, you can come to that conclusion, absolutely. But because it was under my understanding that, like, all the stuff that happens in the show, like the astronaut episode is, like, little girl in the astronaut suit trying to kill the doctor. And then is that not when they also got Madame Kavarian? Like, didn't they like kill her or whatever at the end of that?
No, they didn't kill her until the one where It was the one where River was like stopping time because she wouldn't kill the doctor. So that was the end of season 6.
And see, then and then she in the suit who doesn't kill the doctor replaces the little girl her in the suit who was going to kill the doctor. The little girl, white girl version of her that was going to kill the doctor. Because didn't she escape from the suit?
I don't think she was going to kill the doctor when she was a babe, when she was like still a little kid. I think she just escaped or something. Like when the astronaut at the beginning of season 6 came and killed the doctor, that was a full grown River. Or not like full grown, but it was like she had already. It was earlier on in her timeline as River.
She was Alex.
But she was Alex, yeah.
See, I clearly just need to watch the show with you for you to just explain everything because Moffat did not explain it properly.
Literally, when we started recording this, I was like, I loved it, and now I'm confused as hell.
Season 6 is a mess. It's a high-key mess. And I think, as we were saying earlier, it's trying to follow up on the momentum of season 5 and, like, that same, like, intricate mystery. Because it's the same intricate mystery. Like, they just built on top of it. They're like, the whole thing was, like, one big proverb or one big, like, phrase of the silence. And then season 6 tried to, like, and then silence will fall. Like, that was the second part of what, whatever the saying was from season 5 with the crack in the wall.
When the question is answered, yeah.
Yeah, like, they kept expanding on the same thing, and it was just like, okay, just do a new thing. Let's just do something new.
Yeah, he wouldn't do anything new.
But back to Amy.
Let's talk about season 7 and their end, just because we need to.
Yeah.
So, I've never watched...
I forgot you haven't
because you're a hypocrite. That's why. Because I literally realized when we were filming Tarbis that I just did not watch that episode. Like I was like, I remember it. I remember it clearly.
It's impossible.
I watched like the trailer or something. I did not watch their last episode. I don't have any. Like, the Statue of Liberty became an angel.
Yeah. And
they were sitting in the cemetery, and then they were on a park bench. Yeah. But I'm feeling like that was all in the trailer.
It's literally all in the trailer. Yeah. There's, like, so many things that happened in this episode.
Yeah. I mean, even just season 7 in general, I feel like shouldn't have happened the way it did. And not that, like, individual episodes were bad, because I don't think that they were.
But
I just think that as a whole, there was no, like, they should have said goodbye at the end of season 6.
Absolutely.
Because when they did because then they, like, came back and it was like, it's a goodbye tour. And that didn't really make sense because then it was like these, like, little one-offs. They started with the whole thing about Amy and Rory being divorced. And then by the end of that episode, they were cool again. And then, like, they did all these little one-off situations that didn't really have anything to, like, they could have spent that time, developing Clara as a character, and they didn't. They like dropped her in for one episode, and then that was it.
That
and
the
like
beginning of season 7 or season 6?
Beginning of season
7. They were inside the Dalek, right? Or,
yeah.
How do I feel?
Yeah, and not inside the Dalek, but that's when they got put in the Dalek planet prison.
Yeah,
and then that's where we met.
Planet of the Daleks.
An iteration of Clara, but the thing is like. By the time we got to like goodbye, like when they were actually leaving, it was just like it was fine, you know what I mean? But it just felt like it should have happened sooner. And like they're like, I don't know. It just, it didn't.
I also felt
also because like a lot of the episodes were like very, like they didn't come back and do like some really like dope shit. They came back and did some like, okay, sure.
Yeah, I think the one thing too about like the end of the Pawns was I liked, and I think this is like season 7 marketing. They had these shorts where he had left an ood with them, and he would drop in for tea and blah blah blah, and then like you kind of got that with the beginning of season 7 where he would drop in and then they'd go on an adventure and then they'd go back to their real life, and I liked that ending.
That's the other thing is they started to make that an ending. They started to have it be like we're settling down. We're like kind of at this point we do every once in a while we'll like go off and hang out with the doctor. We'll be gone for 6 months and come back the day of. Like they had some party and they left and they were gone for 6 months and no one knew except for Brian, who was like, "How long are you gone this time?" Y'all got on different clothes, but like it was. like that seemed like, okay, cool. Like the end of the Power of Three when they're like, yeah, we're all great, and now, bye, Doctor, we'll see you. We'll see you later. And then by the time like the Angels episode came, it was like, I thought we'd already, like, that, what was the point of that? Like,
yeah, and I feel like, again, I didn't watch the Angels episode, even though I thought I did. And I probably should go back and watch it. I mean, I definitely should watch it, right?
Yeah.
But I have to rewatch the entire season because I don't.
It's only like
fine,
7 episodes,
it's
though.
not that many episodes.
It was only half of the season, which I think is also something that did a disservice to both Amy and Rory and Clara, is to have them be and then they split it weirdly in the middle of the season. Like, there was a break. It was basically the only season that was like 7A and 7B, which is like a thing we're doing in America, and it's partially inspired by British TV, but like the way that they did it was just so like,
this was also
just make them separate seasons.
This was when Sherlock was going, and he had all of these like
going on,
too much scheduling conflicts and all this stuff. Yeah, I feel like there was like this, we want to do this big emotional ending for the Pawns, which didn't need to happen. So the one thing I did like a lot about Amy's season 2 was like James Corden, I guess, was just like, I want to be on Doctor Who for an episode or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they had that kind of standoff episode where Amy was stuck on the TARDIS and he, the lodger, and I forget if Craig.
Yeah.
James Corden plays Craig. And then he goes back. Is it like a special episode or a holiday episode? Or I don't know.
Yeah, it's into season 6, I believe.
Okay.
Stormageddon.
Yeah, with Stormageddon, Dark Lord of Maul. And not Mommy Craig. He goes back and he like sees them and they have an adventure, and then it's like, bye. And I loved that because it was like, oh, we're going back here, and like, we see Amy as that's why I thought she was a model, because we see her modeling.
No, she was a model at the beginning of season 7. She's literally modeling, and then Rory comes to like deliver the
divorce papers.
The divorce papers. It was,
and then there was
and then
another
they get
episode,
taken by Dalek.
And and then the thing that you're thinking of is in the Craig episode. The episode is set in the mall, and we see her perfume ad, and like a kid like asks her for like an autograph or like a picture or something. Yeah, that's why you're thinking they like introduce it earlier and then actually show her doing it, but then never explained her interest in it, her background in it, her experience in it. It only shows up those 2 times, and it was just like, so this is what what she does. The nurse is married to the... Okay, like, if they had done any more work in explaining it, it would have been cool, but because it sort of was just this random thing that she suddenly did, it was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that, like, in my brain, he leaves an ood with them, he comes and checks in every once in a while, and then he goes off with Clara and gets busy, and they, go their separate ways, and they get old.
That would have been great. And that would have been a great season 7 to have both companions. Like, if they had done that, where it's
like his regeneration episode, where, it could not be him on Trenzalore or whatever, but, like, he could also just be, it could be all 3 of them together. That would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the other part about that ending, and like you said, like doing it a service to both the Pawns and to Clara, is that there's scheduling conflicts and blah 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 real world stuff that goes into the into how they set up these seasons, and I'm not sure if that's like how he originally perceived it happening.
Right. Absolutely.
They have to like build this stuff in, but I do feel like when they meet Oswin in the Planet of the Daleks, right? Is it Oswin or Osgood? Whatever. First iteration of Oswin, Clara. Osgood's the doctor cosplay girl.
Which is just, they couldn't have done a different name.
But when he like meets her and they have their thing, she has a distinctive personality. And then when he meets Clara the first time, and they start to become companions, and she's nannying or whatever, that personality I feel like really meshes well with who Oswin was and makes sense. Then they end the season with her going through his time stream, and that's why she's the girl who doesn't make sense, or the impossible girl or whatever.
We'll get to it next episode, I guess.
Right.
We'll figure it out.
But then she becomes this whole different character, right? And that's kind of similar to what they did with Amy and Rory, which is like they end season 6, they're the people that they are, right? But then the first half of season 7, they become these whole different people, different motivations that doesn't really.
And I think I get
gel.
I think the purpose of that was that he was skipping into their lives so sporadically that they're changing and growing without him. But then I feel like they never really reckon with them become, like, if they had decided to become adults and like live their life and they had come to a decision to not travel with him anymore, that would have been just as emotional and a painful of an ending for these characters, because they obviously don't want to tell him they don't want to do this anymore, and he obviously is going to want to keep coming back. And I think that if they had done something like that, it could have been just as emotional, just as much crying of like, we still love you, we just cannot do this anymore, we're getting old, or whatever their reasoning was, like, we want to live our lives. That could have been fine, and it would have been just as, instead of what they ended up doing, which is like he physically cannot go get them in 1920 whatever New York, instead of like making it so that it was impossible for him to get them no matter what he did, I think it could have been a stronger like emotional thing if he emotionally couldn't go get them because he'd made a decision and a choice and wanted to respect what they wanted to do. But I think he would have had to agree strong enough in order for it to be as much of to make it equal to the rift in New York, where he literally couldn't go to the city of New York ever because
in that time, just in 1930, whatever the fuck.
Well, so then that makes even less sense. I thought he just could never go to New York after that. Because then he could just go to them in 1945 or 1955. Like, he could just go visit them again later. I think he literally cannot go to New York for whatever reason.
No, he can't, because he was in New York when they got.
No, I mean after they're taken. After they get taken.
I'm pretty sure they said specifically, because it was like they ended up back he couldn't go back to New York at that time before they got taken. So like they rescued Rory, and he came back to the present. Yeah. And they and then Rory got took, and then Amy got, but like as they came back, the doctor was like, yeah, we can't go back because it was like some rift thing with the TARDIS. Like it wouldn't. I think actually it was like the angels like energy. Something about it made it so that he couldn't go back. And obviously this is still dumb, and I think the idea that we were talking about just leaving him makes most sense. But I think what it was.
But it had to have been their whole timeline of them living in New York.
I don't know about the other. I think that was a hole, but it was like specifically that year. That was a plot hole.
What?
Magic time.
But
I'm very confused.
No, but I thought that like it was magic time in that they made it so that like the angel's energy made it so that he couldn't visit them from 1920 whatever, or like whatever year we like get taken back to until whenever they die. Like that's what I thought was happening, because otherwise it does not make sense that he does not go get
back the year before,
because then it doesn't make any sense that he doesn't go back to see them. It literally doesn't make any sense, because they never came to that decision that we just talked about that they could have done to make a like reason why he couldn't go see them. This is like he really could have gone to see them and he just never did.
He was sad for 100 years.
Well, and see, that's the thing.
Victorian England.
That's it. Okay, so this is the thing. So they do this big, emotional goodbye, and then he grieves them for 100 years.
But he could have gone to see them,
right? But if they would have just said like, "Okay, we're done. We don't want to travel anymore,"
he still could have grieved and all of that.
And he's losing his, basically, like we set up that they become his family. He grieves the loss of like traveling with his family. He tries to hang out. They have that Black Cube one, right, where he gets, and he's so bored, and it's been like a week or something like that. So he knows he can't just live with them, right? So they go their separate ways. It's the same like sadness that you have when Donna and the doctor leave. I mean, not exactly the same, but it's, he can go see her or
Yeah.
whatever.
But then he would break her.
Right.
And I
Right.
think
More
that
like
would be...
Martha.
I guess it's more like Martha, right? Like, he could go see her, but then he knows, like, she is done.
And moved on, yeah.
And has moved on.
Yes.
And if they happen to see each other and some shenanigans pop off, then so be it. But
And they're like, hey, you know what I mean? They're still friendly and whatever.
And they know
but
where to find him, like, if they really needed
Yeah.
something.
they got his line. They could hit
But
him
now
up.
I'm, like, even more mad at the end because...
It was dumb.
It just didn't...
So y'all basically,
But
like,
you still have to watch it. I'm sorry.
I
No,
started.
you have to watch it, Robin, because you're no, you have to watch it because otherwise you're a hypocrite. And
Yeah.
You are the one person who's just like, absolutely, if you're watching it the first time, you must watch every
Must watch
single
all of them.
episode.
Yeah,
And you
watch
cannot
it.
skip any. But
if you watched what's Love and Monsters, you can
Right.
get through this episode.
I'm sure I can. I
You can
like,
get through pretty much
literally-
any episode if you can get through Love
Literally,
and Monsters.
I
But,
did
like,
not. I didn't know I hadn't watched it until we were talking Tarbis the first time, and I was like, I don't think I actually.
I know, but so you need to do that.
So I will go and watch it. But the thing I want to like leave you with is that we started this episode where we started recording, and I was like, these are my favorite companions. I really loved them. This whole thing was lit. And then all y'all did was like make everything that I thought made sense not make sense.
okay.
So now I got to go back and rewatch the whole thing. And you're
Thanks,
gonna,
Moffat.
Hashtag thanks Moffat. But okay, so let's end on a more positive note because I do feel like we do trash the show a lot for people who really do love this show enough to have a podcast about it when the show's not even airing and we aren't even sure how the next Black companion is going to be. So like we're doing this out of the love of the show and not
I got
just
3 Doctor Who
because
posters up right now.
right, like
Maybe even 4.
I have a giant picture of the exploding Van Gogh TARDIS above my television. I stare at it every day. I have a TARDIS on my desk. I have a TARDIS on my home desk. It is a cookie jar, and when you open it, it like makes the noise. Like we do love this show, guys. For anyone listening,
cardboard TARDIS that my friend made for my birthday, and it's
we
just
do
it lives
happen
with
to
me
love
now.
this show, but
We do love the show.
we are just critical fans who see the concerns, but we are, and it's been more and more concerning as the show has progressed, but we are fans, and I think that I do enjoy Amy. I do enjoy her relationship with the Doctor and with Rory, and like the overarching things that they intended to do, and then when you look at the little things, it sort of does have not fall apart completely, but kind of, you know, their progression gets a little weird, and well, mostly season 7's progression is weird, and now I'm stuck on the thing that we thought of where it's just like that would have been such a much better ending, but it's not as like big and like budget. It's not a big budget decision, you know?
Yeah.
So I get it.
Not a weeping angel as a Statue of Liberty. So,
Right.
you know.
Like, it's not a high budget, like, let's put all our money into the CGI and, like, one of the most biggest landmarks in the world, like, psych, she's an angel. Oh, snap. We're geniuses. Like,
not even gonna lie, when I saw that shit, I was like, oh, what is we gonna do? We all gonna die.
Listen,
like, not even gonna lie, when I
y'all
saw
don't
it,
even live
I was
here,
concerned.
but y'all don't even live here. I live in New York City. Like,
I know,
like,
and I was
Yeah.
like, well, that's just another reason for me to not move there.
I was like, oh, so I can't go to New York ever? Y'all just gonna
Word, okay.
take New York away from me?
All right, bet.
Because I really enjoy that town. No? All right.
I was like, yep, guess I'm not.
I ain't never seen this. But then I told myself, like, I've been there a couple times. I ain't never seen the Statue of Liberty. I can do it.
And the cool
I ain't never-
thing about that reveal is that, like, so many people go see the Statue of Liberty that she's very rarely unwatched. And so, like, someone's always staring at her. And so, like, that was a cool part of the concept. So yeah, I think that Moffat does more cool things in Amy's time frame than he does with Clara, but things that work out anyway. And I think that I've talked about this on what, like, our favorite episodes thing is that, or I think the skip list one, where season 5 is still my favorite season. I think it's the strongest one. It has the cleverest stuff that happens with a good Doctor and a good companion. Like, all of that stuff worked. So it was like the peak season. Like, I think when you're telling someone to watch Doctor Who, you have to sort of pick where you tell them to start. And while I think most people would be like, just start at season 1, I can understand why that would be off-putting, because even when I first started watching Doctor Who, I was like, I don't understand. These accents are very thick. It's very dark. The quality is very 90s, even though it was 2005. I was just very stuck, and so it took me a couple times to watch it and get into it. Like, I immediately clicked out before. I think maybe Rose had just met the Doctor, and I was just like, I can't do this. And then so I clicked out of it. And so I started it later. But I think that once Moffat got the show and it was sort of another fresh start, it was sort of like, well, if you can tell someone to watch season 1, or you could tell them to start at season 5 and then just go back, because it's timey-wimey and you can watch it kind of in any order, as long as you, like, watch a section at a time, not like any episode in any order. But like season 5 is a good place to introduce someone to the show, because, you know, it's like peak Doctor, peak companion. Things are really fun and bright, and it sort of gives you like a good overview of like what this series is and what it intends to do with like being clever and being emotional and like the ups and downs of how time travel works. And oh my goodness, I'm so confused, but not too confused. Which, you know, unlike later, it's like, I'm too confused. But, like, you're the right amount of confused. And so I think that this was a good place for it. And, it, like, as we were also saying, it's, like, the place when it was, like, the biggest and, like, the biggest global phenomenon. Like, I saw the season 7 premiere in, like, the Ziegfeld Theater in New York, because they had, like, a big like event,
American tour.
They came to America. They were in this like fancy old
filming
car.
America. They're doing this whole thing.
They had this fancy old car, and like they came, and like
Matt gave me a burrito at Comic-Con.
Yeah, Matt and Karen were at this event in New York, and they like did a Q&A afterwards with, you know, on the stage of this big theater. Like 8,000 people could fit in this theater. So we like watched it all there, and so it's like it was at its height here. And so like this does a lot of service to the franchise, because it was so good until it wasn't. So that was my sort of positive ending.
Cool. Thank you for listening. You can check us out at blackgirlscreate.org. Read Connie's writing at Black Girl Nerds and all over the internet. Follow us on Twitter at WeBlackandNerds. Hashtag Tarbis to let us know your thoughts about Amy Pond and other Doctor Who things. And join our Slack, where we have a channel dedicated to conversations about Doctor Who. Next time, we will be discussing Clara Oswald.
And please remember, we actually do like this show.
I like Clara. It's going to be funny because, like, I don't dislike Clara, but we'll get
there. We'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's
Connie
difficult.
doesn't like her, but I don't dislike her.
Yeah.
I don't dislike her, but yeah.
That's
Amy and Rory.
High praise, guys. High praise.
Check them out. Give us your thoughts and feelings about your companions. Don't know feelings. Give us your thoughts about the companions.
And Robin will watch.
I will watch the end of the second half of season 7 that I
first half
forgot to do. First half.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
The black girls have the box.